Introduction to hypothesis test for a mean. In this section, we'll be focusing on performing a hypothesis test for a mean where the population standard deviation sigma is not known. We will only know the sample standard deviation. In order to do this, we must first verify that it's from a simple random sample and either the population is normally distributed or n is greater than or equal to 30. Remember, we're going to be using the t-distribution with degrees of freedom n minus 1. These are the 7 steps for hypothesis testing. First, we're going to write the claim mathematically, stating h sub 0, remember that's the null hypothesis, and h sub a, which is called the alternative hypothesis. H sub 0 contains the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to signs. The h sub a, the alternative, is the less than, greater than, or not equal to signs. Next, we're going to use the null hypothesis to assume the population parameter. The population, and it should be mean, not proportion. I apologize for that. The population mean. And the alternative hypothesis to determinative is left, right, or two-tailed. So the null hypothesis is to assume the claimed mean. Okay? And the alternative hypothesis, if it's left, right, or two-tailed. Okay, remember, left is less than, right is greater than, and two-tailed is not equal to. Next, we're going to state the rejection criteria. Our rejection criteria is since we're going to use a p-value method, we're going to reject the null hypothesis because remember that's the underlying assumption if our p-value, which is our probability value, is less than or equal to our significance level. And our significance level can be like 0.05. Remember, less than 5% is considered unusual. That's why we would reject it. Sometimes it's 0.01 or sometimes 0.10. Next, calculate the test statistic using StatCrunch formula, some sort of technology here. Remember, X bar is going to be the sample mean. Mu is the claimed population mean. S is the sample standard deviation. And N then is the sample size. So the formula is X bar minus mu divided by S divided by square root of N. Next, we're going to determine the p-value using StatCrunch. So remember the p-value, if you're looking at the t-distribution, which is like the normal curve here, okay? The p-value is a probability of reaching that test statistic or greater or less than. So it's a probability of it falling within there, that region there. So that's the p-value. Next, to make a decision, reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Remember, we reject the null hypothesis if the p-value is less than or equal to the significance level. In this case, we'll choose 0.05. Then we would fail to reject the null hypothesis h sub 0 if our p-value is then, p-value is greater than our significance level. So remember, we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. And then number 7, we interpret the decision in the context of the original claim. So remember, we have the 4 possibilities. One, we can either, there is sufficient evidence to reject, there is not sufficient evidence to reject. There is sufficient evidence to support, or there is not sufficient evidence to support. And these are the cases. Remember when it is, remember we're going to look at rejection. Rejection is, remember, when there's going to be the equal to sign. So that means the claim is going to be HA. When it's support, that means it's going to be HO. And then the is and is not is whether you reject or fail to reject.